Thank you all very much for turning up this afternoon. You've probably got as wet outside as you would have if you'd been rowing yourselves today. This is Sophie. She'll be doing a presentation today. Now, Sophie has achieved an incredible thing rowing across the Atlantic, but on top of that, she did it with cystic fibrosis. Some people get dealt a bad hand in life, a bad hand of cards, and it's really what you do with that hand of cards that's important, not what cards you get delivered. So I'll let Sophie carry on now, and she can tell you all about her little adventure. Okay.
Thanks, John. Thanks very much. It's really nice being here to talk to you all today. So you'll realise as I talk, I take quite a casual approach to all of this. So don't feel like you're in school or anything like that. If you want to go and get a drink, just go and get a drink while I'm talking, okay? I'll keep an eye on the time because I have this incredible ability to just keep talking. So I'll keep an eye on the time. I'll aim for talking for no more than 45 minutes, and then I'll be leaving some time hopefully to answer any questions if there are any in the room. Is that all right? Perfect. So you've just got me today. But as you can see from this photo, I didn't do this Atlantic row alone. So I did it with, in the photo, we've got, so obviously me here at the front, and then behind me in the red, we've got Polly. And Polly turned 51 when we were 6 days into our row. Then you've got Janine at the back of the photo, and Janine's remarkable and took on this feat at the grand old age of 70. And then we've got Maya here over to the right, who's the youngest member of the crew, and she was 24 when we did the row, and turned 25 in Antigua, which was the goal, to make it there before she turned 25. So for those of you, I don't know, some of you might have heard about what we achieved and know a little bit more, and some of you might have not heard anything at all. So I'm going to sort of give you an overview really. I'm going to take you back to the start, because a lot of people see what we achieved on the Atlantic and think it was just about the expedition. And it wasn't. For us, it was a 3-year journey even getting to the start line. And in a lot of ways, looking back, and a lot of people told us this at the time, but you don't really believe them. But a lot of people said to us, actually getting to the start line is the hardest bit. And a lot of crews, from what we're seeing now, and from what the ocean rowing crews told us, that a lot of people don't make it to the start line because they can't keep going through that sort of often 2 or 3 year period of everything else, just getting yourself ready. So here are some of the photos. So that's here actually. So this is the home of Nayland Rowing Club, which is how 3 of us met. So myself, Janine and Polly are members of Nayland Rowing Club and have been for a while. And this whole journey started when one day Janine asked me if I'd ever thought about rowing across the Atlantic Ocean. And I said to her, oh, are you asking me to row across the Atlantic Ocean? And she said, yeah, I think I am, yes. And so I thought about it a little bit. We had what felt like endless conversations at the time, trying to work out what that might all look like. And then a couple of months after she first asked me, I said yes. As far as I was concerned, I had 2 choices at that point. I either said yes or I said no. And I just couldn't bring myself to say no, because I just thought, how often in life do you get asked to row across an ocean and be part of a crew with someone who genuinely wants to do something like that? It's very rare. And you know, if you'd asked me on some days when I was out on the Atlantic, did I make the right decision, I would have told you absolutely not. But now I look back and say I absolutely did make the right decision. So that's where it started. Originally we were going to be a pair, and then quite quickly that changed. And then Polly came on board when she heard about what we were potentially planning. And then we found it incredibly difficult to find a 4th member. And we had a couple of 4th crew members that lasted for a few months, and then for one reason or another left the crew. And so Maya didn't join us until about 10 months before we were actually going to go on our crossing. So for Maya, it was actually a massive whirlwind because she joined us at quite a difficult stage, which I'll talk to you about. And she didn't know us as well because we already knew each other from the rowing club, whereas Maya didn't. So for her, she just sort of threw herself straight in there and got involved. So you might already expect this, but if you want to row an ocean, we realised very quickly that it's incredibly expensive to want to do something like rowing an ocean. We estimate I haven't got an exact figure, but it costs us about £140,000 to complete the expedition, which for some people might not be very much money, but for us as a crew it was outrageous. I work as a social worker for the local authority, Polly's a nurse in the NHS, Janine's retired, and Maya earns not very much, unfortunately, as a water sports instructor. So we all had to find this money somehow. So hence why we had endless photos like this of fundraisers that we held often here in other places. Honestly, you name it, we did it. We did absolutely everything and anything. And then alongside that, we also were very fortunate to gain business contacts, either locally or further afield, who without them we wouldn't have been able to do the trip. And Bluestone Resorts, they came on board as our lead sponsor, which was absolutely incredible. And our boat, some of you may know, went on to be named the Spirit of Bluestone in honour of them. So alongside raising the money, we then also had to turn ourselves into ocean rowers. So yes, the three of us were rowers, and for a lot of people, when I say that, they go, oh, okay, as if it makes sense. Whereas if you ask most of my rowing club, would you ever consider rowing across an ocean? They say absolutely not. So yes, we're rowers, and this is the stretch of water that we row on. That's nothing like rowing across an ocean. We learned that very quickly. So we had to learn what being an ocean rower might entail, and then try and train ourselves at ready. So part of that, this is a photo of us. We went down to a sea school based in Essex that's run by Lady Dawn, who is an incredibly talented ocean rower herself. And she's actually just done her 5th ocean crossing. She's out in Antigua at the moment, having just completed it. So we went down there and we learned about navigation, sea survival, first aid at sea. We had to do our VHF courses. So we went down for a week, an intense week of training that was tailored specifically to ocean rowers, which was incredible. And then we also had to work out what we did with an ocean rowing boat. So we raised the money to buy our boat. We went to pick it up and the boat turned up in Pembrokeshire, and we all sort of looked at it. So this is really exciting, the thought of owning an ocean rowing boat, but then we looked at it and thought, what on earth do we do with it? Because, and this is our boat here. This is down at Dale Sailing, just down on the marina. Then they were really kind to us and helped us put the boat in and out and look after our boat for us. This is it here as well. This is us actually out on this stretch of water in front of us. And so we had to learn firstly what the boat did and get used to it, and then we had to get out on the water and sort of get used to how it felt being on the water and how it moved through the water. And it's incredibly different from the Celtic longboats that we normally row. Firstly, it's massive, so it's 10 metres long, which when you look at it, it's quite a big vessel. Obviously, by the fact there was 4 adults going on that for an unknown period of time, it needs to be quite big. But to sort of manoeuvre it was quite tricky, really. And we had to learn about how the navigation equipment worked, and what I guess the reality of what it might be like to live on board the vessel. So, whilst a lot of people might think preparing for an ocean row, this is what people think is about getting physically fit. It was about that, and I spend, you find me at 6 a.m. in the leisure centre, sat on a rowing machine for an awful amount of time most of the time. But actually, a lot of it looked like this. And this is our boat actually down in one of the sheds at Dale Sailing. And believe or not, the state of our boat here was, I think, 2 weeks or something before it got shipped out to the start line, Lanzarote. So we were working on it constantly. We had to change the electrics on the boat. We had to put new safety equipment on there. We had to fix the rudder. There was endless sort of things we had to do, and also none of us knew how to do any of these things. So people were very kind to us and very patient with us when we asked for the 50th time, could they come down to the boat and help us do X, Y and Z. And there was many times where we drilled holes into our lovely boat and then realised we put them in the wrong place and had to fill up the hole and re-drill it somewhere else. So it was very much a process of sort of trial and error, really. And then this photo here, you can see, so this is the deck of our boat. Don't know if you can tell, but there's a really big hole in it where we've ripped the arm which the oars would go into. We've managed to rip it off the deck. And this happened because the boats are built to self-right. So if you're out there in big sea and you capsize, which there is a chance that that's going to happen, the boats are built, if they're all weighted properly, that they'll just instantly pop back up. So you could get on board and carry on your crossing. But we needed to test whether that would happen or not, and that was something we had to do for the event that we were taking part in. So again, Dale sailing, we were just down here, it was really exciting. It was only a couple of days before the boat was due to be driven to Essex, ready to put in a shipping container to go to Lanzarote. So they used a crane to do it. I wish I had the video to show you actually. So they used a crane and we all stood by and watched, and over it went, and as we had hoped, it popped straight back round, which is excellent. But then suddenly what happened, because we tied the strap that the crane used to turn the boat onto here, the pressure of it doing that ripped it straight off the boat 2 days before it was due to leave Pembrokeshire. But it's really helpful that the people who've done that are people who who build boats and fix boats. So they were very kind to us, and they put it straight into the workshop and fixed her up, ready to go over to Lanzarote. But I think the reason I'm sharing that with you is because it was very much a sort of taking things as they came, and it was all very imperfect actually, and we just did the best we could with what we had at the time. So the beginning of January 2025 came, and it was really exciting. We boarded a flight from Bristol over to Lanzarote, expecting to get there and be reunited with our lovely boat that had been travelling for a couple of months by container. We get to Lanzarote to be told by the event organisers that the boat had not yet arrived, and they didn't know where it was. Yeah, so we thought that it might get easier when we get to Lanzarote. I mean, it was easier because it was at least sunny out there, but other than that, we just basically had a holiday for a week in Lanzarote while we waited, and we discovered that the boat, fortunately, they found where the boat was, and it was in a container and it was on the island, but customs was shut and they wouldn't release the boat to us. So yeah, that was the next challenge to overcome. So a week later, eventually the boat was delivered to us, and we brought it out of the shipping container. We were incredibly excited, and the event had it set up so that there was sort of like a space for us on the land to make sure the boat was ready, to repack the boat, do your final checks before it got put into the water. So when we collected the boat, and the first thing you have to empty it, this is what we found. So we found storage units that were supposed to be there to store things nice and dry, full of disgusting water. And then this photograph here, I think I've got another photo, yeah, should be, there was a solar panel there, but the event organisers checked our electrics when they got the boat out of the shipping container, and they realised that none of them worked. So then we had to rip them all off, these brand new solar panels that we'd spent months putting on down here. We had to rip them all off and try and source new ones. The problem is that there was like all the suppliers were at an event in Germany, and so no supplier of solar panels could send them out to us. And because Lanzarote being an island, there were none available on the island. and we didn't have time to play with because the event start was quickly looming. So again, Dale Sailing came to the rescue one more time. We phoned them and they managed somehow to find one supplier in the UK that had some solar panels that would be okay. And one of our friends from the rowing club very kindly flew out to Lanzarote unexpectedly with suitcases of solar panels ready for us. And then whilst all that was going on, we were out there packing and unpacking and doing jobs and cleaning, trying to work out exactly what we had on our boat and where it was all going to get stored. So yeah, this is the solar panels. So all of these here are solar panels, and these are all extra ones here, sorry. These were all ones, and they were all on the deck as well. They all got ripped off, and then these were the ones that were put on in their place. So this is what it looked like in Lanzarote. This is us this is Polly in one of the cabins. That's in the bow cabin of the boat. Covering up all the bolts so that we didn't crack our heads on them, which I'll later tell you that we did. And this was a view out of the hatch, just all doing sort of endless jobs on the boat, because we had to fit all of that stuff, all that came out of the boat. Jeez. And I had to go back on.
And 4 of you.
And 4 of us. Yeah, so it was incredibly difficult. So all of this was our food here. So what we did, we made food parcels for each person for each day. So our food was dehydrated, sort of like army ration packs. So what you do is you just open them up and add boiling water, close them back up, leave them for 15 minutes, and then the food will rehydrate. And we had to eat between 4,000 and 5,000 calories a day. So the volume of food we had to take on the boat was just outrageous, really. And because there's a crew of 4, obviously you don't know how long the crossing is going to take you. So the event rules were that we had to take 70 days worth of food. So the amount, which is why there's so much of it. So alongside the dehydrated meals, we also all made individual snack packs. So there would be about 1,500 calories a day in snacks. And then each we could just pick the things that we would like to eat on the boat, and again individually parcel a day's worth of snacks up together. And then other stuff we had to take, so all this here, that's all our gas for our cooker. We had a very small jet boiler. I think I've got a video of us using it later on in the presentation. We had a lot of safety equipment to take as well. We had navigation equipment, we had sleeping bags, we had personal kit. It sort of felt endless, really. But the boat was ready, and it says here it was our final night on land, and this is Polly stood by the boat. Yeah, and we were feeling very nervous at that point, thinking about what whether had we prepared enough, and had we managed to think clearly throughout all the challenges we'd faced. What had also happened was that we were delayed. So the event was supposed to start on the 23rd of January, but last January there were really big storms in the North Atlantic at this time, and so we had a weather router for the event who would give us essentially, he would look for the weather window and give us a go ahead to go out there, because obviously when you're going, we're leaving from land, so you're most vulnerable when you're near land because you've got something to crash into, essentially. So you need a good weather window to get out beyond all of the islands, and hopefully to have a sort of safe start, because it's quite nerve-wracking going out there, and the event organisers know that even though you've prepared and you've done everything that you need to do, you don't really learn about ocean rowing until you're doing ocean rowing. So that first week you're sort of learning, and I'm going to tell you a bit more about what that first week was like. But you think you know how to do things until you're actually in that first week and you realise you haven't got a clue what you're doing. So you need to be given some space as well. So you need hopefully some sort of safe, decent weather just to allow that first week for you to get out safely beyond land, but also to settle in to being on the vessel. So we got delayed by a whole week. So after every single challenge we had, they just never let up really, and more challenges came. But then finally, our weather reader Simon gave us the go ahead that we could leave on the 1st of February 2025. So here we are. This photograph is us with the other event participants. So we took part in an event called the Atlantic Dash, and there were 4 boats in our fleet. So there was us, a female crew of 4. We had Gary on the right, who was a solo rower, and then we had a crew of 4 men who did it, and then we had a pair, Ruby and Steph, a couple from the UK but actually live in Antigua, so they were sort of rowing home, which is really special. And we've kept some sort of lifelong friendships with these guys now as well. So we set off, and as I said, the first week was about settling in. Well, we learned very quickly about the reality of ocean rowing when within an hour of leaving Lanzarote, I had a call, because we were still in mobile signal. I had a call from the event organiser who went something like this. He said, "Sophie, where are you going?" I said, "Well, we're going west, going towards Antigua." He said, "No, you're not. You're on a direct collision course for Fuerteventura, and if you don't turn that boat around, you're going to hit land in the next hour." Because we suddenly realised we didn't really know how to use a chart plotter. Anyway, we very quickly learned how to use a chart plotter, and we were off on the right direction. I have to say, the first week was sort of hell at times, not the whole thing. So Maya and Polly had seasickness. Maya had incredibly extreme seasickness and was very unwell. The boat was just so uncomfortable, and the way it moved was, you just sort of think, how on earth are we going to live on this boat for this amount of time, where you're constantly moving, being thrown around. I didn't take a photograph, but I wish I had. My legs were black and blue from just being knocked constantly around the boat. And we very quickly realised how difficult it was to move up and down deck. So, for example, we had the toilet facilities was a bucket, and we went out with a plan that we would have 1 toilet for the boat, for example, and I think it was up the bow end of the front of the boat by us. But I think the girls used it once, and you realise just how hard it was, because you were crawling up the deck. You couldn't walk up the deck, so you'd be crawling up, and it'd take quite a while. The 2 in the middle would have to stop rowing, so you've interrupted everyone rowing, and it was just this is crazy for every time someone wants to go to the toilet. So fortunately, we did have a second bucket on board. So I think within half a day, we decided to do ensuite facilities for each cabin and have a bucket either end of the boat. So I'm going to show you a little video actually. I hope the sound should work. Morning of day 2 of our ocean row. The sun has risen. We've waited a long time. So that was the sunrise of day 2 on the ocean. We'd done our first overnight on the boat. You can see the way the boat's moving. So we went out into quite big swells. So I think the waves here, it's hard to tell, but I think they were about 2 to 2.5 meters in height. You can see this is one of our ensuite facilities here. Yeah, and you probably couldn't hear what I was saying in the background, but all I'm saying in the background is that the sun's risen, we're okay, because this is footage we were sending back home to go onto our social media. But what I'm saying there is that we waited a long time for the sun to rise. All I remember of that first, the first sunrise on the boat was I would row with Polly, and I asked her. She had a lot of patience with me, because I think I asked her repeatedly what time the sun would rise, because that night felt like the longest night of my life. And this photo in the middle is that's me having a break in the bow cabin. So that's sort of what our living quarters were looking like. And then the photo on the end, that's myself and Maya. And that's I'm holding there our Starlink device. I don't know if any of you have heard of Starlink, but it essentially offers onboard Wi-Fi via satellite connection, which was absolutely incredible for us. And that's how we stayed in touch with people at home, and that was really important because we had our safety team on land from the event, but also this is how we shared our story back with social media and checked in with friends and family. And sharing our story via social media was really important because one, we had a huge community following, but also that's how we went on to raise money for our charities as well. So yeah, so day 4 is when we lost sight of land. Again, me and Polly were out on deck, and we were having a chat. I said, "Oh, Polly, I can't see land, can you?" She said, "No, I can't." And we were like, okay, there we go. And it's a really strange feeling because we had no idea when we'd see it again. So that was really strange. So I've got a couple more videos here. That's what we saw for the whole crossing, basically nothing. You just look out and that's what you were seeing. It was quite nice at times, but also sometimes you realise it was really remote where we were. It was quite bleak at times as well. So the cooking facilities that I mentioned. This is Maya making breakfast. She's really good at making breakfast, Maya. Oh yeah, and literally in the background, she doesn't stir it, so you'll see now. Wow. So I'm sure you can appreciate how difficult it was to deal with boiling water when the boat was moving like that, and all of us got burnt at different times because you thought it'd be okay, and then suddenly you get these rogue waves out of nowhere that would just come crashing over the deck, which was quite tricky. And also everything, so for instance, our fresh water on the boat was really precious. So we had a desalinator on the boat, so that would convert the seawater into drinking water. And that's powered via our batteries, which are charged via the solar panels on the boat. So it wasn't endless, we only had a certain amount of water every day. And so you just had to be so careful because the way the boat moves, if something isn't tied on, it just goes overboard. We lost so many things overboard, and when they're gone, they're gone. You can't just row and try and get it or anything, you just got to carry on without it. What happened was we learned in that first week how difficult just really sort of at home what would be very simple tasks became, and also then how much longer everything took. And obviously bearing in mind we were rowing in shifts, so in the daytime we'd have 2 people rowing and 2 people either resting or doing boat chores at all times. And we'd row 2 hours on and then 2 hours off, and in that 2 hours off you'd need to do your boat chores or group tasks, and also try and get some rest and obviously eat, rehydrate, etc. And then what we did for us, because it worked better, the first 3 days we did 2 hours on, 2 hours off the whole time, and that was the most exhausting and horrendous thing I've ever done. And we realised that maybe wasn't going to work for us, so we worked out a routine whereby at night we were all able to have sort of an slightly extended rest period, maximum of 5 hours off the oars, which we worked out was just enough to sort of feel human, because you could have a nap at a later time in the day as well. But that would mean that for a 3-hour period no one would be rowing the boat, so we tie the oars down, and so we need the wind behind us pushing us along. And as long as we were able to go 1 knot an hour, which is equivalent of 1 mile per hour, then it meant that the auto helm, which steered the rudder, would be able to keep working and keep us moving in the right direction towards Antigua. So some of the highs of ocean rowing. So after the first week, everything just seemed to get a little bit better, and a lot of it sort of blurred into itself actually, because we got into a routine on the boat of who did what and like how we slept and how we ate, and we got used to the way the boat moved, and so it meant that it made time for us to be able to actually try and enjoy ourselves a little bit at times, not all the time but sometimes. So for example, one of the things I think all of us talked about being incredible was just seeing nature do its thing completely uninterrupted. Because out there, I think the whole crossing we saw about 12 ships That's all we saw the whole way. And the closest one came was within 5 miles of us, which is quite, I mean, it feels, to see anything out there is quite remarkable actually, and it felt a lot closer than it was. But what that meant is we had an uninterrupted view of the ocean and the sky, and that was incredible. So here you can see the full rainbows we got to experience. This night in particular was incredibly special. So this was in the second half of the crossing. The water was completely flat calm, which is quite an unbelievable experience out there. There was nothing else to be seen. And before the moon rose, the sky was completely full of stars, and there'd be multiple sort of shooting stars going. And I think this night was the same night that me and Polly were on. We saw a comet. It was like a bright green flash, which was incredible. And the stars were so bright and they were reflecting in the water, so you couldn't tell where the sky ended and the water began. And then as we were pulling through the water with our oars, there was bioluminescence in the water as well, because it was so warm out there. And I remember really clearly going to use the ensuite facilities, and you'd scoop water into the bucket. And as I was scooping the water into the bucket, it was full of sparkles from the bioluminescence, which was amazing. So then we were rowing along, enjoying that, and then suddenly, the photos never did it justice, but then suddenly we watched this incredible blood orange moon just rise. Yeah, it was absolutely spectacular as an evening. So that was a real joy. And then the other thing that was a real high for us was having some sort of fun, really organised fun. So one of my jobs on the boat was to be the social secretary of the row, and so I pre-organised some potential little social events that we do, because it was really important to sort of break up that routine of just rowing, because we were going to be out there a long time, and also those events helped keep us together as a crew and just maybe remind us about part of what it was about being out there. It was about sort of experience life and doing it as a crew. So we had a Valentine's Day social on day 14 of the row, and then I think this photo here of Polly and Janine is we actually managed to play a card game on board when the weather was a bit calmer, and so we enjoyed an hour off the oars to do that. And then again, here's some other photos. So believe it or not, we all did swim out there. And I have to say, for me personally, that took more courage for me to get in that water than it did for us to push off from Lanzarote. I was absolutely terrified of not being able to get back on the boat. So we all swam, but as you can see here, we were always tied onto the boat at all times when we swam. And I think when we swam, because we had to wait for obviously the water to be quite calm, so it was as safe as it could be. So I think we were literally in the middle of the ocean when we had our swim, and surprisingly as well, the water was like bath water. It was 27 degrees in temperature, which is amazing. And so that's the other thing, it's not actually a high, it's a low for me. The sun was a high, but at its hottest we had a thermometer on board and we put it out on deck. It was 39 degrees in full sun, and there's absolutely no shade apart from the cabins, which then turned into saunas. That was incredibly hot. So for Janine here watching the sunrise one morning, and then here as well you get these incredible, I can't think what the actual name is, it's terrible, but it's basically seaweed, but you'd get these, it looked like the yellow brick road out of the Wizard of Oz, and you'd see it coming and then you pass through it, but it was a bit of a pain because it would get stuck around our rudder. So then Maya was the best at getting, she was really good at just getting in and out of the boat, in the water and back in the boat. So yeah, Maya would be sent in to go and try and get rid of it off the daggerboard and rudder, because we didn't want anything to slow us down. So again, here's some other highs. So Janine sprouting mung beans on the boat, so that was a little bit of freshness to go in our food. We also celebrated Pancake Day out on the boat. So we, as you can see, we took a very small frying pan with us, and you know the pre-prepared like bottles of batter you can get that you just add milk to? We took one of those with us and added, we made milk out of powdered milk, and we made pancakes and had pancakes on the boat. And then once a week we'd make sure we had treats on board. So once a week we would all look forward to a tin of fruit. So that was always a nice little celebration of another week on board the boat. But there were also some challenges, of course. So when the sea got bigger, that was quite challenging. So we haven't got any videos of when the sea was at its biggest state, because it was quite difficult to get footage of that. And obviously to get the footage, we either have to have a GoPro or a phone out on deck. And when it was really big, that was the least of your worries. And it probably wouldn't have stayed on the boat. But about halfway, so this is myself and Polly, who we always rode together, and Janine and Maya always rode together. We're about halfway, and we got a weather report from our weather router that told us that the sea was probably going to get quite big, potentially anywhere between sort of 4 and 6 metres in height, the waves were going to be. And so he advised us, tie everything down, get yourselves prepared as best you can for it. And we were rowing, and actually the bigger sea was sometimes quite fun and welcome, because one, if it was in the right direction, it would push us faster. So it would ease us how much energy we had to give to the rowing. But also it made it a bit more interesting, because it gets quite boring out there. So you could, when the waves were big, we'd sort of, you'd row up the waves, and you'd try and surf down them, and then the boat would be moving like this, so you have to really think about where you were putting your oars. You made the rowing shifts go faster. But then there was times when it was really big, and then it wasn't fun anymore, and it was actually really scary. So I remember really clearly, about halfway, we were rowing, and we knew the weather was going to be really big. But all I can describe is that this wall of water came towards the boat as me and Polly were rowing, and it was completely sheer. So, and that you can't run from it. You just have to just hope for the best and go up it and hope that you don't capsize the boat. But all I remember is looking up and seeing Polly in front of me up in the air, and then beyond Polly was the sky. And when this wave hit our boat, it broke. So then the boat was up like this, and then this huge wave broke over the top of it. Obviously we're not rowing by that point, we're just holding on for dear life. And Maya said she was in the cabin, and all she could, I don't remember, but she said that all she could hear was me shouting. But fortunately, and that was the only time on the whole crossing that I thought the boat might capsize, because there's something called pitch poling, which I think would be utterly, completely terrifying, where you go up like that, but the boat just keeps going. But the boats are absolutely incredible, and the boat just was like, no, that's all right, I'm just going to go up and over it, it's fine. So you learn very quickly out there to trust the boat. But anyway, here's a video of us enjoying some slightly bigger sea.
Back to the morning at our breakfast, in Polly, on board, and
So yeah, can you see what I mean? The waves just come in whatever directions they want to come out, and then you just had to sort of respond to that. But I think I'm laughing in that video because I thought that was quite fun at the time. So yeah, some of the other lows were like the state of our bodies. I mean, this was tame. We haven't got, again, out there, it was quite hard to get all the footage that we wish now looking back on that we had. But all our skin and hands did some really disgusting things. And it was just constant because we were constantly wet. So yeah, so our hands were like that, and if our hands were like that, you can only imagine what our bottoms were like as well. Yeah, the cabins were really small, and this is poor Maya, this is when she was very seasick. So it was really cold. There was one day, Janine went into her cabin, then 10 minutes later, she opened the hatch door and she just had blood dripping down her head, because she just unexpectedly just head-butted a bolt in the cabin and it cut her head. And that was really, we got really used to that. So I learned very quickly that you don't try and sit up in the cabins, you have to get in and lie down straight away, because you're a bit more sturdy then. But they were very small, and at the times when we'd have that extended rest period at night, although that was great, it meant that 2 of us had to be in each cabin, which wasn't particularly comfortable. You got used to that, but yeah, it was a little bit tricky at times, especially the closer we got to Antigua, the hotter it got. So there'd be 2 of us in these saunas together trying to get a few hours of rest. This is a video of Maya and Janine enjoying some bigger swell. And that was really normal, those conditions. You could hear in the background, I think they're listening to an audiobook at that point, so it just became really normalised. You just roll along, listen to a book, and that's what it was like. So yeah, so we did loads of problem solving at sea, and these are some of the things that we had to navigate really along the way. And what we learned is similar to sort of getting to the start line, where I said everything seemed to go wrong, and you sort one thing out, the next thing would go. That carried on at sea. So like, for example, I remember it was pitch black, so it was the middle of the night or early morning, either or, and all the electrics just completely went off. And if the electrics go off, the boat's suddenly not being steered. So then the boat just goes and starts going in circles, and then you're worried because you're going to side onto the waves, and if you side onto these big waves, you're more likely to capsize. And then you're in the dark and you haven't got a light, so then you're trying to find your head torch to work, and then you're just thinking, what on earth's gone on? Why have the electrics all just gone off? So we had that on a couple of occasions. Janine really injured her ribs, which made quite early on in the row, so that made the rest of the row quite uncomfortable for her. And then also, when we were only about 500 miles from Antigua, so the row was 3,200 miles. So when you're 500 miles away from the finish, you think you're almost done. It feels incredible. And we've been out at sea for a long time. And then suddenly we hit these headwinds. And because of the size of the boat, we couldn't row into headwinds. And so we had what's called a power anchor with us. And it's like a giant parachute on a really long bit of rope that you put out, and it turns the boat into the waves to try and stabilise, to prevent capsize, and essentially it just makes you stop. And we had to do that 3 times. The first time we only had to do it for a couple of hours. We just ended up in a squall, and the wind was absolutely unbelievable. I've never experienced anything like it. We'd just been through a thunder and lightning storm. Suddenly these winds came that were blowing us around in circles. The boat was completely out of control. And then this rain came. That was the heaviest rain I've ever experienced in my life, to the point where Maya actually had a shower in the rain. And she suddenly got the shampoo out. And then after sort of half an hour, it just completely stopped. But we had to put the power anchor out that time. And then when we hit the headwinds, we had to use it. And I think we were on it for 16 hours. And then we managed to get rowing again, but then the headwinds came back, and we were on power anchor for 36 hours. And by that point, all our friends and family had arrived in Antigua and were sending us photographs of drinking cocktails on the beach. And we were just stuck out at sea, like desperate to make it to Antigua. I'm just going to clip through these because this is So one thing that I haven't spoken about, and I'm going to touch upon, is obviously my personal experience is that I not only rode an ocean, but I also did it whilst living with cystic fibrosis. For those of you who don't know, cystic fibrosis is a genetic condition that I was diagnosed with at birth, and there's no cure for it. I'll always live with cystic fibrosis. And basically what happens in the body is that the body produces all this lovely extra thick sticky mucus, which causes a lot of problems throughout your organs in your body, and particularly the lungs, because it makes them like this perfect breeding ground for infections to grow. And with cystic fibrosis comes a reduced life expectancy and a lot of medication and treatments to try and prevent sort of lung damage happening. And so I had to take all the stuff that I do on land to look after my health out there on the ocean with me. And I had to work really closely, not just me, but the team, really closely with my CF care team in Cardiff to plan for the row, think about what happens if I get on well on the row and how do we manage it. And also to make sure that my nebulizers, which you can see me doing in this photo, would work on the boat, and that my medication would all survive on there. And what's great is that what I think is really interesting is that we gathered some information, me and my CF care team. So the nebulizer that I'm using actually recorded data of how often I was using it. So the row took us 53.5 days, and over the row I did over 24 hours of nebulizer treatments on the crossing, and I also took an average of 34 tablets a day whilst we were out there as well. So fast forward to having been on that boat for 53 days, 12 hours and 1 minute, which felt like a lifetime. We eventually made it into Jolly Harbour in Antigua, which I have to say was hands down the best experience of my life. We were all very lucky to have friends and family waiting for us on shore, and also so the other boats that took part in the Atlantic Dash, amazingly, given that we had a solo, a pair and 2 crews of 4, we all arrived into Antigua within 26 hours of each other. Wow. Which is just mind-blowing to think. But what was really, and we were the last boat to arrive, and so it was really special because all the other crews were also there waiting for us. So it was a really special moment to get there. And this moment, for I think a lot of ocean rowers and for us, was really symbolic. It was about that one, we made it safe. Most importantly, we made it safely back to land. But it was sort of, I remember being down at Dale Sailing where the boat was, spending endless hours doing all these tasks on the boat on our weekends. And I said to Maya one day, I think I sort of had enough really, and I said to Maya, I said, can we really do this? And she looked at me and she said, I think she put down the spanner or something that was in her hand, and she said, Sophie, we have not done all of this to not see Antigua from our tiny little ocean rainbow. And the point when we were locked in the cabins for that 36-hour period, me and Maya drew a vision board. We had a Sharpie in the cabin, and it's still there on the boat now. We drew a vision board on the wall of the cabin, and the vision board was us, our boat, on the shores of Antigua, and us holding the flares. And that was something that when it got really tough out there that we'd really think about. And I can remember spending, the 2-hour rowing shifts on multiple times, the whole 2 hours, just imagining what it might be like to get there. So it was really special when we actually got the opportunity to set them off. And this is the photo of our first bit of fresh food on land, and me and Polly, if you zoom in, we sort of look like animals eating our burgers at that point. So I think it's only fitting to say, whilst it's only me you've got here talking to you today, we managed to achieve 2 world records out on our row. I was the first person with cystic fibrosis to row across an ocean, and Janine, incredibly, has got the world record for being the oldest woman to row across an ocean. And whilst, yes, me and Janine have got records in our own names, it wouldn't have been possible without the 4 of us as a crew. We did it together, and so those records belong to the others just as much as they do to us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sophie. Just to think, 53 days ago, you were having the Christmas dinner at Alteravan in Fulls Castle, so you can imagine being rowed in a boat since Christmas dinner. That's what it was like. Or another way, the last time it didn't rain in Pembrokeshire. So, open up the floor if anybody's got any questions for Polly, please.
Do you know how far apart the 3 boats went on their trip? Or were you always in sight of each other?
No, so we saw, normally you wouldn't see another boat, you'd leave, and sort of once you'd lost sight of each other off the shores of Lanzarote, that'd be it. But remarkably, on day 5, Ruby and Steph, the pair, we were really close, and so they rowed over to us, which was amazing. They were able to do that. So we've got this, I haven't got it, but there's an amazing photograph of them taking a selfie on their boat with us behind them. And that was really special. And actually, that was also incredibly helpful, because that was a day where our electrics failed, and so we didn't have our auto helm steering the boat, so that meant we had to hand steer at night. But it was at night where there was cloud cover, so there was no stars, there was nothing to try and you can't see anything out there, it's completely pitch black, so there was nothing to try and steer the boat by, no reference point. But because they knew that, because we managed to shout across to them, so they were very kind and they went ahead of us because they were faster than us, and because they had their navigation light on, basically they let us follow them all night, which is really special. So we saw them, and then just before we got to Antigua, the crew of 4 men were behind us the whole way until less than 48 hours before we arrived into Antigua, and I think they maybe thought we need to overtake these girls, but we were like, overtaking the time. So they came in range of our radios, so we had a little radio conversation with them, which was really nice, just as they were passing.
How did they row then with only 2 of them? Were they one on and one off?
Yeah, so they'd change, one on, one off. But like us, they could also rest and have the boat would steer itself, which is what Gary, the solo rower, did. Yeah.
How did you decide? You said you always rowed with Polly.
Yeah.
How was that decision made to be rowing with Polly?
I don't remember actually. I mean, there wasn't that much choice. So we knew we'd already made the decision. But I actually can't really remember why, that me and Maya would be in the bow cabin and Jeanine and Polly would be in the stern cabin. So obviously you wanted to row with people in the opposite cabins. So I think that was just what we decided to do. Yeah.
And wildlife sightings?
The reason I haven't spoken about that is because that was the one disappointment of the row. We saw 1 dolphin the whole way. I know, it's unbelievable. 53 and a half days in open ocean, and we'd see more going on a 2-hour boat trip from Pembrokeshire. And all the other boats in the fleet saw everything. Like Gary, the solo rower, was having breakfast one morning, and a whale just joined him right next to his boat. Ruby and Steph were rowing, and they had this super pod of dolphins where thousands of dolphins appeared, and we're just with them for a couple of hours. But they all missed us, or we weren't looking. But that's what the event organisers kept telling us, that we weren't looking enough. And at that point, when you sat out on deck for 10 hours a day rowing, it's like all I'm looking at is the sea over here. So yeah, I don't know why we didn't see much, unfortunately.
Did it change you as a person? Have you got any more ambitions to do anything similar again, or is that you done with?
Yeah, I think it's hard not to change you as a person, because it's so remarkable getting to experience something that most people will never experience. And I think just by the whole journey from agreeing to do it and then getting to the end, it took so much to do that, and you had to really lean into it, and you had to learn so much new stuff, and then in doing so you end up learning so much about yourself, don't you? I think so. There's no one thing that comes to mind about how it changed me, but I definitely think it gives you a sense of confidence, and it gives you a new perspective on things, because I think it makes you realise that, well, if you can do that, you can probably do any of the things that you sort of really want to put your time and your energy to. So myself and Polly are in the very early stages of potentially planning another expedition. So watch this space.
Yeah.
What's the future of the boat? I know at one point it was in Bluestone as an exhibition piece. Is it going to be recycled and used again?
Yeah, so we were really fortunate that we bought our boat for £40,000, and we managed to buy the boat through doing a lot of fundraising and some business sponsorship, on the deal that then when we come to sell the boat, that money will go to our charities, and our charities are the Cystic Fibrosis Trust and Paul Sartori Hospice at Home. So at the moment we still have the boat, and it's in Pembrokeshire, just in storage at the moment. So potentially, if we do another row, we might use the boat again for another expedition, because the boat is for sale, it's not sold yet. But at some point it will be sold on and hopefully go on to do further adventures, and then the money donated to to our charities. And when we bought the boat was already second hand when we bought it, so it had done there's a rowing event that rows around the whole of the UK, and it had done that I think in 2018. Yeah.
So you had presumably the race organisers were monitoring your progress all the way across, and you also had a support team back here in the UK for issues on your boat. What other support teams did you have around it?
So that was it. So it was completely unsupported out there. So it was just land-based support that we had. So with the Atlantic Dash, you got safety officers who were experienced ocean rowers. So you could obviously contact them via satellite phone, and we'd have a daily check-in with them. We had a tracker on the boat, so they could obviously keep an eye on the tracker, but also so could our family and friends. And we could as well, when we logged onto the internet, to check how closely the boats were and check if we were leading the way or not. So that was the support. We also had a weather router that we'd have daily contact. So he was a weather expert, incredible guy, and we'd have a daily weather report from him, and then he would guide us with any decisions about navigation then based on the weather that was incoming. And then apart from the event team, we also had a land-based medical support team who were sort of expedition medics that we could contact if we needed to for medical advice and assistance. But of course, a lot of people ask, well, what happens if, say, we had needed rescue out there? What would we have done? We'd have done what any other boat would do out there, and essentially you'd send off an emergency signal. We had various devices on board to do that, and the nearest vessel would have come to our assistance, which would have likely been like a shipping container, because although we didn't see many, I didn't mean to say they weren't around, because I think we could only see about 12 miles around us, and you know, at that time of year there's quite a lot of vessels out there, so yeah, that would happen. Yeah.
Were you in trouble with your electrics, for example? Was that just up to you to sort out, or you could actually phone a friend and?
So to a certain extent, like, we were the only ones on the boat to be able to fix it, but we also could then contact our land-based support team, and so we were able to, as long as we had the means to do that, which we were fortunate enough that we did, because we had various forms of communication. So we had obviously the Starlink, but we could only use the Starlink when we had power, so that was out. We had a satellite phone, which we could have used as long as we made sure it was charged and things, we could have used. Although ours broke really early on, it was rubbish, so we never used that. And then we had what was called a Garmin InReach, and that was like a little mobile device that we had to make sure we kept charged, and then you could just use that, and that would, you could sort of text on it essentially. And that's sort of what we would use if we needed to. So yes, they were incredible. So when our electrics failed, but we managed to get, I can't remember the exact detail, but we managed to get enough power to contact, then they talked us through and were able to help us locate a faulty wire and then change that. So we also had various tool bags on board with sort of spares and tools and things we need to do those sort of jobs on there.
How much money did you actually raise then?
So far we've made a £10,000 donation to the Cystic Fibrosis Trust and a £10,000 donation to Paul's Story Hospice at Home. And then of course when the boat sells, then it should sell for about £50,000, and all that money will go to our charities as well. Yeah.
Sorry, on one of the slides you showed something that you didn't discuss.
Oh yeah.
Your chest, you said when you had a chest infection.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So when you had a chest infection, were you able to take oral antibiotics? Or?
Yes, that's what I did. So on day 16, I realised that I thought I had a bit of a chest infection, but I'd done all that planning with my CF care team, so I had sort of extra drugs and antibiotics on board. So fortunately, I was able to start taking a course of those, and then I was able to join a virtual hospital appointment via Starlink, which was incredible. I just got passed around all the team members so they could see what it was like out there, and they sort of monitored. We stayed in touch via text, via the satellite phone, and I was very fortunate that the antibiotics did their job.
So was that on the phone at 8 o'clock?
Hmm?
You're 25th in the queue, yeah.
Yeah, imagine. Yes.
When you were raising funds to fund the whole expedition, like, where did most of the money come from? What kind of events and donors? Or?
So a mixture. So we did a lot of our own fundraising events, and that was a lot of hard guns, like bingo nights, quiz nights. We did a psychic night. We had stalls at various places. We took the boat and had a stall at the Southampton Boat Show. We did, lots of community events. We made some merchandise that we sold for a profit that went back into the row. But the majority of the money came from corporate sponsors. So Bluestone was our main sponsor, and they were responsible, I think, off the top of my head, for helping us fundraise about £70,000, and that came from them, but also their business contacts. So hang on. So these are all the logos of the different companies that sponsored us along the way, and all of them gave us different amounts of money. We were very fortunate that some businesses gave us £10,000, some £1,000. It all, it varied really, but we had a real wide range of support from a lot of businesses.
I'm not a rower, but looking at the images there, you're always facing backwards, aren't you? Did you ever get frustrated that you couldn't see where you're going to?
Not really, because there was nothing else to see.
Same view.
Apart from when we were getting to Antigua, we could see land, but you just look over your shoulder. So yeah, it wasn't worth seeing where you were going really, because it looked exactly the same as where you were looking.
Question. When you were looking for a fourth member, as well as having someone who was fit, I imagine it had to be someone that wasn't too annoying because there's nowhere to hide. Did you all keep in touch after you came ashore? Or
yes.
A case of, thank God that's over?
Well, I can only speak about my own experience. No, we're all still friends, which was one of the goals that we had for doing the crossing. But you're right, so a lot of people, when they thought about what, who we would gain as our fourth crew member, thought, you want a rower, you want someone who's fit. And we actually said, they're at the bottom of our priority list. We want somebody who's like quite a well-rounded individual, who's going to be kind on this boat for this amount of time, and who's going to get involved in the teamwork type of bit. Because yes, rowing is a big part of it, but also it's definitely psychologically harder than it is physically. So we wanted someone who could get involved and keep going when it got tough and look after. And that was one of the things we did really well on our boat, is we supported each other and we looked after each other. So you check in. So for example, Maya really struggled with the food. She didn't like the food, and she because she got very seasick, and some seasickness remained the whole of the journey for her. She would sort of not eat so much, but she was very slim, and obviously we were going to be out there a long time, so I would just make sure that she was eating, and I'd check in with her, and then I'd check her food pot, because I knew she didn't like it, and then if she hadn't eaten, I'd say, oh man, you've not eaten, you need to, I'll make you a meal, you need to eat something now. Those little jobs, checking in on each other. Have you drank enough water? Have you put your sun cream on? And I know it sounds really simple, but when you're really tired and you sort of can't be bothered and you've had enough, you need each other to pick you up a little bit, or if you need to have a bit of a cry, that was okay, or you need a hug, and to keep going. We were really good at looking after each other, and because like Polly, for example, she made everybody's lunch every single day for the whole crossing, which was amazing. So we all just did different things because we knew that we were only strong if we were all strong together, because we all needed to get safely across on that boat. And we were really fortunate that one of our sponsors, Tiger Teams, they do a lot of psychological team building stuff. So we had lots of sessions before we went, looking at our risk profiles and our personality profiles, to learn about ourselves, and then also learn about each other and how each other might have responded in sort of an extreme environment. So it was really helpful out there.
What about your family back home? Do they all get on and know each other really well beforehand, or?
Yeah, I guess they they had to because we had so many fundraising events. They were coming into contact with each other a lot, and that was really helpful. And then the dash event that we did had a WhatsApp group with one person from each person's family, and would provide them a daily update as to how we were getting on. And then again, like I say, we were fortunate that we all had people that came out to Antigua, and they all, because we were late getting there, they all enjoyed a week's holiday together without us. So that was really special part of it, that they all got on, and sort of created those links with each other as well. Yeah.
Did Polly need to use her nursing skills at all?
Her what skills?
Her nursing.
I don't think so. No, she was really good at sort of keeping a check-in on us though. But we were really fortunate that medically there were no major issues or sort of quite minor things really.
I worked with Polly once.
Oh, amazing.
And I know Maya in Dale.
Yeah.
And I know Janine since we had children.
Mm.
So you were the only one I didn't know.
Yeah, worked out well.
Yes. Similar-ish. Did you feel fitter out there because there's no germs coming to you from outside your little environment than you would have on land, or is it a silly question?
No, it's not a silly question. So for me specifically, my cystic fibrosis, the winter can be a really difficult time, you know, everyone's ill, aren't they? And so those things, you know, passing around coughs and colds and those things can make me much more ill. So being out there without all of those things and in some sun as well, that was really good. And one of the things, because no one with cystic fibrosis had ever done an ocean crossing, we didn't know how it might affect me. We were sort of stepping into the unknown. And when I came back, I went for a hospital appointment quite quickly afterwards just to check in. And the consultant said to me that she could not believe how well I'd come back from that row being. Yeah, which was remarkable really.
So the next one's on the NHS, is it?
Hopefully. Yes.
The team, the event organisers there, you showed a great photograph of all the stuff that had been stored on board the vessel. Presumably they check that you have got everything ready to go before they release you into the ocean, is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. So there was a really thorough sort of scrutiny process that we had to go through, and that started way before we even left the UK. When the event organisers came down and checked that we had everything. So we had we had endless lists and lots of paperwork from them that we had to be able to satisfy before, and they gave us obviously the go ahead to go. And if they weren't satisfied that they thought we could get across safely, then they wouldn't have let us go.
Presumably there's no issues with the other boats either?
No, everyone got to go, and obviously everyone made it across safely, and the boats were all in one piece, etc. Yeah.
Yeah. Did you have 53 days? Did you have a time in your mind that you wanted to complete by? Were you racing against time? Or?
Not really. So for us, it was never about doing it within a set time frame. We just wanted to get across safely. And to have tried to have had sort of a good time and remain friends. But obviously we had 70 days worth of food on the boat, so we wanted to do it within 70 days. And we had in our minds about 60 days. So we did it faster than we had anticipated, which is great. Well,
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Well, I'm glad somebody mentioned the charity bit, because there's a box over there you can all leave a donation in on the way out, and so the donations will be going to the Cystic Fibrosis charity. But I think if you could all, I think we've had a remarkable story from a remarkable person, so I think a round of applause please.